Hi there. If you're confused about the concept of collusion and not sure what constitutes acceptable practice when you're studying with other students, then you should find the contents of this video very helpful. Please be aware though that different institutions can have different rules and expectations when it comes to academic integrity. So it is important that you consult your own institution's policy on academic integrity and familiarise yourself with the relevant rules and expectations, rather than just relying solely on the contents of this video. Let's start off by defining what we mean by collusion. In an academic context, collusion simply means where two or more students collaborate in the production of a piece of work that they should have produced independently. What this in effect means for you as a student is that unless you are instructed explicitly to the contrary, you should assume that any assessed work you are set needs to be planned and produced by you and you alone, i.e. without the help or contribution of other students. The circumstances under which collusion can occur vary widely, but a very common scenario is where one student loans a plan of, a draft of, or even a completed piece of assessed work to another student who then uses that work to some degree in the production of their own assessed work. Students sometimes interpret collusion as meaning that any form of discussion about any assessment with any other student is off limits, but it doesn't mean that. It's okay to talk in general terms about an assessment with other students. It's okay to discuss the topic being addressed by an assessment with other students. It's okay to share literature that you found that could be useful in addressing that assessment with other students. However, when you start work on the planning and the drafting of that assessment, you need to keep your efforts strictly private. Students sometimes approach their peers, who might also happen to be their friends, to ask if they can have a quick peek at their work, just to get an idea of how to approach a particular assessment themselves. They of course say that they have no intention of copying or otherwise using any of the work that's shared with them, and they may be very sincere in this intention, but it's still vital that you do not give your work, whether it's in plan form, draft form or completed form, to any other student to look at, even your friends, for any reason. This is because simply showing another student a piece of work that you're working on or have completed constitutes the offence of collusion, irrespective of whether that other student goes on to use part or all of the information you shared with them. This is because simply by showing another student a piece of work that you're composing or have completed, you are enabling the conditions under which collusion can occur. Students sometimes ask, well, what if another student views or obtains a copy of my work without my permission and then goes on to use it in the composition of their own work? Well, in this situation, that student would of course be guilty of collusion. But you need to realise your university might also hold you accountable if you were deemed not to have taken reasonable steps to keep your work private. Initially, this might seem really unfair. However, it's to prevent ambiguity or uncertainty around who originated the work and whether permission was or wasn't in point of fact given to view the work, precluding universities addressing instances of collusion. Put simply, where collusion has occurred, all of the students involved are likely to be held accountable unless there is evidence to exonerate specific individuals. Students are sometimes surprised to learn that they can be held accountable if they're deemed not to have taken reasonable steps to secure the privacy of their own work, and wonder what such reasonable steps might entail. Well, it's usually really simple stuff, like if you're working on a communal PC, don't leave your work on screen unattended. Also, if you're working on a communal PC, remember to log off after you've concluded work for the day. If you're using a storage device such as a USB stick, make sure that you password protect that storage device so that if you lose it, people can't get access to the files that it contains. Of course, you should consult your own university's policy on collusion to establish what their expectations are when it comes to you taking reasonable steps to protect the privacy of your own work. Students sometimes say, look, I'm really not very good at proofreading, and it would really help me if I could show my work to another student strictly for proofreading purposes. Can I do that? Well, I'm afraid the answer is no, you definitely can't do that. Proofreading does not give you an exemption from the rules relating to collusion. If you're struggling with your proofreading, I'd make two suggestions. First of all, see what support your own institution provides. Many institutions have academic support departments that will provide proofreading services for students. And of course, it's perfectly okay to avail yourself of such services. Secondly, I'll put a link to a video that I've produced on how to proofread more effectively in the top right hand corner of the screen. One final thing that you need to be aware of when it comes to collusion is that just because a specific assessment has a collaborative component or a group work component doesn't mean that collaborating with other students is acceptable for the entirety of the assessment. Assessments can differ in the extent of collaboration that is permissible, and this should be made very clear in the assessment documentation. Let me give you an example. Let's say you were preparing a group presentation where the explicit instruction was that no part of that presentation needed to be the sole contribution of one group member. This would mean that full collaboration would be permissible throughout the planning, production and delivery of that presentation. However, if you were engaged in a lab report assessment, let's say, and had been told that you were allowed to collaborate with other students at the data collection stage only, then you would not be allowed to continue that collaboration during the analysis, interpretation and write-up of that data. If you're unsure about the extent of collaboration that is permissible for any assessment type, then your first port of call should be the assessment documentation. If it's not clear what extent of collaboration is acceptable from the assessment documentation, then you should speak to the tutor who set up the assessment and ask them to clarify exactly what degree of collaboration is acceptable and append the assessment documentation accordingly. I hope you found this video useful. If so, please do hit the like button. If you're interested in how psychology can help you study more effectively, then please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so you know when I post new content. Thanks very much.